pardon me if maybe BMA, Border Management Agency, spoke about this. I don't know. I might be repeating. It might be boring. So we signed all this protocol. Now we must implement. In 2019, just before protocol, we went for the SADC summit in Zambia. And those of you who were there, you'll recall, we were attacked very furiously in that summit that we are, as South Africa, we are a stumbling block to the implementation of the free movement and the borderless SADC. Because we were saying no, before we can allow this, it was, of course, championed by the Department of Public Works, Department of Home Affairs. We said each country must have a population register, a database. That's the only time we'll implement this. Because, for example, pardon me, some of you, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, nobody knows how many people are there. That's the reality. Nobody knows. They just guess, say, so many millions. They do not know. And a lot of different type of passports. Other countries, the passport is a paper that is not digital. So we will end up receiving those people which we don't know who they are. Right next door, you know the passport next door as you go up north. The citizens there, they take out the photo and they put the photo of a man in and they carry it, they come through. And when they are here, when you get used to know him as Daphne Manamela, you take out the photo and you put another photo there. Then it's the same name but different face. So he said until that is resolved, we won't allow this. And we were attacked fiercely in that meeting, especially by Angola. It's not a secret, it happened. And we tried to call them outside to negotiate, but they say, no, let's implement. You, South Africa, you think you are the big brother in Africa, so we want to show you. And they told us on the face that when you sign all these protocols and you ratify them, were you not so clever enough to see what is happening? We signed them for the sake of coming to the South, coming to you. We never intended going up. And they said, if we refuse, they said, no, let's test it with a vote. And you know what's going to happen? If you test it democratically, you'll have to test any resolution with a vote, not so. SADC, we are 16 countries. And South Africa was objecting, Botswana was objecting, Swaziland was objecting. The one next door here was indecisive. The one inside us was indecisive. So when you go for the vote, out of 16 minus 3, arithmetically it just don't make sense. Ne? We lost before we start going for vote. And we begged Angola not to pursue this motion anymore. Even now they keep us pushing us for that because they say we're a stumbling block. But at the end of the day, the fact is we need to have people that are documented in South Africa. We can't have illegal immigrants and live with them. But unfortunately, the nature of our economy pulled them down. And of course, worst part, our immigration laws make it difficult for them. Once they arrive here, they apply for asylum or refugees, and they stay forever. That's the reality that we have. That's the reality that the border police and the police in the country have. That's a challenge we have, but we need to. One day, somehow, we need to get out of that quagmire. The second focus area is threats to the authority of the state. That, of course, is what happens internally where other departments do not do what they're supposed to do, and you have protests, and we yourself must face the community. And unfortunately, you have to face those communities for things that are real. where services were not provided for. The third priority is the investigation of crime that threatens the economy of the country. Again, in this area, some of the protocols didn't do as well here. If you go to central Johannesburg, or you go to even rural areas, all the shops are closed. It's spaza shops owned by foreigners. They've got documents to be in the country. They're selling stock. And most of you can ask yourself, if you go to places like Makro, have you ever seen a queue of Pakistanis coming to stock? No. Where do they stock? That's a question that we must answer. Some intelligence says they stock from the trucks that are carrying stock on our roads. And they keep the stock, whether expired or not, they change the label, life goes on, because they're here to make money. And that money, after it has been made out of the country, there's nothing for the economy of this country. So meaning, money, the cash that they take to their countries, when they put it in the bank, it means this reserve bank here must send equal money to the reserve bank of that country. So actually, we are not gaining anything. It's a system that we need to look at. Secondly, you go Middle Joburg and all areas, they are selling fake clothes. So in other words, us as South Africa, we are consumers. Illicit mining is another example. So our focus area number 3 is to fight this crime with a view that we should rebuild our economy. Because currently we might be sitting a bit in a false economy, especially if we can go out there and see what's happening. And we are here, we are not going anywhere as South Africans. There is nobody that's going to protect our interest and the interest of the future generation of this country. It is us that must do it. If we don't get it right, hoping that somebody in the future will get it right, forget. We are the ones that must get it right. The clothes that we are wearing now, everything is not manufactured here. So we are just like, they give clothes, we give money. They give goods, we give money. So there should come a time where you should wear a jean that is manufactured somewhere in Johannesburg or in Gauteng or KZN or Limpopo. That's where we should focus. So that is our focus area with this specific strategy. We are also looking at crimes that threatens the well-being and safety of South Africans. That is your violent crime, including your GBV, crimes that affect the society at large. So there, with regard to focus area 4, GBV is one of them. And I know all the society, we are putting our heads together to fight this crime. And we should continue to do so, because otherwise as we go along in this fashion, where children are being killed, women are being killed, and when we call in Bizos to address GBV, we call a lot of women and children, we fill them stadium, we talk to them. And the perpetrators are sitting at a soccer field or a sports ground somewhere watching soccer. Or they are in a pub or a tavern somewhere. So you can see then our Bizos are not focused, because we are focusing on Bizos on the victims. What will they do? I mean, they are victims. We should take it where it matters most. Talk to the relevant people. Maybe the comrade here, because she's in parliament, she can also assist us. In China, there is a minister of happiness. in China. Yes, Janet, it's true. Research it, Google it, you'll find it. She's a woman. She's a minister of happiness. They say, they realize the society is too angry. So now and then she make, parties, brides somewhere. People goes. So in this country, we do have Ministry of Social Development. But at some point we need to look at maybe expanding the mandate of that department. I know our General Manamela, you must have, gender-based violence desk, you must have a victim-friendly room. We are doing it, Honorable Mareko, we are doing it. But the question is, why do we turn a police official into a general dealer? When he gets to a criminal, he must show force and deal with the criminal. And all of a sudden, he must look the other side. When he look front, he find a victim of GBV. Then he must start smiling. Don't we think we are a little bit put a lot of schizophrenic in this person? Who said Department of Social Development must work mostly during the day? Why can't we have an office of social development in each police station? And professionals handles victims there. And police do what they are trained for. They deal with the criminal. When they go to GBV, they call the social worker. When they deal with whoever, somebody will handle the criminal professionally. Now we expect these policemen, they are sometimes become midwives. We know it's emergency, we can't do anything about it. But where we know very well that there will be GBV, there will be complaints. So maybe the department should also work 24 hours and start doing that type of work. Look what is happening in Limpopo. I think the province is taking measures also to reduce GBV, to say all liquor outlets, closing time, 12 o'clock. Now they've been taken to court, the government there in Limpopo, to say, no, you can't. People must enjoy. Now, my question will be, have maybe social development, have they ever went to ask families whether they are happy, the mother and the children, when the father is at a pub or a tavern until 4 o'clock in the morning? Are they really happy? So why then, I'm not accusing the department, but I think it's a function that they can do better. I've observed certain places where I stayed. Men, they wake up in the morning, Monday, they go to work, they come back, they stop at a pub. They drink up to 2,300 hours. They go home. I mean, when you arrive home, are the children still awake? No. They are sleeping. Then he sleeps. Tomorrow morning, he wake up, he go to work. He repeat it 4 times up to Thursday. Friday, if he's not going anywhere, he repeats it. He go west now. But if he doesn't, it's either he's going for a funeral somewhere or there's a wedding somewhere. But this thing of having liquor outlets going up to 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock, socially I don't think the Minister of Happiness in China will love that. Same, I think our Minister of Social Development, we need to start looking at that. I think those are some of the measures to reduce gender-based violence. The last one in this area is, we talk of gender-based violence, but we also have got what we call this initiation schools. And only those that come from there, they know what is the curriculum there. You are taught to be a man and nobody must say to you anything. And when you come back, when you behave the way you was taught, then we say, but he's behaving in a very nasty way. The Eastern Cape, I know when you finish, they even give you a knife, isn't it? Pocket knife. And This pocket knife, you are not going to eat biltong. It's for stabbing somebody. It will serve dual purpose. So those are the things that we should look at, Uktwala, and change culture. Because culture cannot always be the same. You cannot accept culture of the forefathers in the Middle Ages and practice it now. I'm going to tell you something that you didn't know, but you'll know why from today. You know the late King Zwelithini KwaZulu, may his soul rest in peace. Some of you don't know why he reintroduced initiation schools in KZN. Offside, well, he was my friend and we relate quite well. We used to sit and have arguments about social things. And he said he will not allow initiations because his great King Shaka stopped initiation school, so he can't go back there. And that was early years when HIV and AIDS was ravaging the society. Early years in 97, 98. And I said, but don't you realize that this province is hit hard than most of this province? I don't say initiation school is a solution, but look, those provinces that have this practice, they are a little bit better off than this province. Why don't you introduce it? He says, no, I can't do. My forefather stopped this, I can't reintroduce it now. Then I said to him, because we're just two of us now, I won't tell you what we're doing. Then I said to him, you know what? He introduced that because of what? He says, of course, because they were supposed to fight war. Now, they can't be sick while they must go and fight. Then I said, which war are you fighting now? The only war here is HIV and AIDS. And that was his culture. What is the culture of Zwelithini now? Then he kept what I says, introduce it. That will be your culture. That's how you will be remembered. That's how, but only 5 years after we had that discussion, he reintroduced it. And he invited me. I forgot by then. Then he said, when he had the ceremony, he said, do you remember that day we were sitting there in the rondavel? What? I says, yeah. He says, yeah, lento yangidla kakhulu. Manje sengiyenzileke. Uyabona manje ukuthi King Zwelithini uyenzeni ngithi. By all means, it's good. So culture is not stationary. We need to review and change it. If many years ago there was Uktwala, there can't be Uktwala even today. No, it's taboo. Coming to stakeholder management and active citizenry, we realize as police we cannot fight crime alone. That's a fact. I think most speakers have emphasized that a lot. So our communities need to talk to us, and they need, of course, to report crime. But most importantly, they need to be witnesses to crime, because police alone will never find somebody guilty when there is crime. So we need that. The last one is the capacitation of the police, which I think we have seen. We are trying our best the last 2 years, the coming year, because in as much as we can have technology to do policing, but when there is a crime happening, you have to have a warm body that will respond to the crime. So we need those warm bodies, but we are thankful for the little that we got. But because now this is a system, criminal justice is a system. As I said, we are the entry point. The numbers we have, yes, will be visible and will investigate crime, because our intention is to prevent and combat crime so that there is no need for investigation. But in case it happens, there should be enough capacity to investigate it, because obviously we must have failed to prevent it. So there should be investigation. And in the process of investigation, in the police, our targets are to take as many cases as possible to court, because these people have committed crime. But the unfortunate part, you'll find that the next segment of the criminal justice system, which is the NPA, their target is not always aligned to ours. We have been discussing it. We are discussing it even now that we should align, because their target is more to have as few cases on the roll as possible, which becomes a problem. And the judiciary, they do not have really a target. They trial a case, as long as the case has to be tried, they carry on. It can take 10 years. I know of a case of possession of illegal firearm. It's a Hillbrook case of 2011. I forgot the case number. That case was investigated, finalized, ballistic report, everything, witnesses. But from that time when it was ready for trial, the case took 11 years. And 2-3 witnesses died, some lost interest, and it ended up not reaching conviction, but it was ready for trial for 11 years ago. So that's where now we know, as it was said, the judiciary is independent, but why should other segments that work with them, they are accountable, and the Bona, they do not account? So that needs to be looked at, because as much as we want to put more cases at court, the other side, they are not working on the same, they are not aligned. So those are areas that I think the systems and, of course, the parliamentarians, we need to look at that, so that we have got one goal to move in a very synchronized manner, so that at the end of the day, we can have the same product. The national policing strategy, we talk about investigation and prosecution. It's just the system that I've just talked about now. We work jointly, we have task teams, coordinated, integrated with the NPA with a view to have same objectives, achieve same results. And of course, they introduced restorative justice. I'll challenge this Indaba to look at the current crimes that we have, or the current offenses that we are reporting on, whether is it the right platform that all these current cases that we are having, should they go through the system? For example, I'm sure it's known now that after the introduction of restorative justice, most cases of your common assault cases, they don't see light in court. The reason why, the case will be open, and then thereafter, the perpetrator approaches the victim, and they talk, sort out
to emphasize
the
that
case,
being they don't trust
other, pay
issue
medical,
of
normally there is no even injury. Even in GPH, it happens. They pay medical bills, they pay each other, and both thereafter, they've got no interest in the case. But the investigating officers carry the docket, going up and down, begging the complainant to come, begging witnesses, and nothing's happening. They're just not interested, because they finalize the case their way. So we need to look at whether shouldn't the system focus more on serious cases, and cases of this nature, like your assault common, and this other one where they insult you, what do they call it? Crimen injuria. Whether those cases can't be handled differently somehow. Because in any way,
crime fighting called socio-economic transformation.
They make peace, they pay each other.
We understand the damage done, the programs we are doing have.
They are happy going on with life. This slide, I think that's what I have explained to say. All these departments, the targets are not aligned. We need to align them. One of our problem currently, the commissioner knows, is correctional services. Correctional services is currently one of the centers of excellence.
It makes you finding
criminals.
We also have some of our vehicles.
And that is where they are recruited. They recruit one another there. They do mock trials. And somebody that you thought, the IO thought, I got my case right, I'll find this one guilty. When he come out of the prison going to court, he's a different person. He has been coached, he knows in and out of the system. Look at the case of Yeni Kuruleni, of the kid Okabo, how it happened. And it's unfortunate that when there is a conviction, the prosecutor and the judiciary have done well. And when the case is thrown out of court or bunged like this one of Okabo, the police, they've bundled the case. But the question is, Gandhi, before you can have a conviction, who worked hard? Isn't the IO and all other witnesses that are being put? So, yeah, it is a system that, of course, we need to relook as to how can we manage the system, which I think is a tough job. I pity you, Commissioner, and your staff. I know you are understaffed, and I know that the prisons are full, or the correctional service centers are full. But currently, a lot of people are being killed from, the orders come from prison to say so and so must go. And unfortunately, the current system needs to be looked at. I'm sure this Ndaba will look at. You know that the perpetrator, they've got the right to a copy of the docket. Now, currently, most lawyers and other perpetrators in prison, what they do, they get a copy of a docket, they look who is the strongest witness here, which will make the case not work. And once they identify those, an order will leave prison to say these ones must go. And those people get killed. And then when he goes to court, next time is the IO, no witnesses, and the person walks free. So that part needs to be looked at. I know people have the right to information, but we need to look at what time should that be given, because witnesses going to end up saying, no, we're not going to court because we are going to be killed. In short, President, I think that marks the end of my presentation to say we need an integrated, we have got the integrated crime and violence prevention strategy. I won't talk about it anymore. In order for us to have an effective criminal justice system, the whole chain needs to be working. Not one chain pushing a lot of cases, and the other chain cutting off a lot of number of cases from the roll so that there is little manageable remaining, and the other chain trial one case for 10 to 15 years. When you go to other countries, go next door Mozambique here, you commit crime. One of my police went there working on the borderline to go and buy food. He got bumped at the back at a stop sign. I mean, a stop sign, you must stop. He got bumped at the back, and police came, they took them, they locked him up. He says, but I'm going to write statement. What is the story about here? You say, no, you are wrong. He says, no, but this guy bumped me from behind. They say, no, but you see, if this police car of yours, you never drove it from South Africa to here, this accident would not have happened. And the next day he was trialed and sentenced 3 months in prison and 9,000 rand. Commit crime today, sentenced tomorrow. We had to find ways as to how we pay that fine to get him and the van back into South Africa. But here, as you know, a case will take 10, 15, 20 years. So somewhere there is a bottleneck in the system that we need to unblock. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks, President, for tolerating me to come in and out because of other priorities. Thanks very much. With those words, asebenzeni. Thank you very much.
We are getting ready for gender-based violence and femicide. But before that, let's give the National Commissioner, Department of Correctional Service, to come and address us.
Zelimalinda la signova Zeluto behali kanzima Zelimalinda la signova Zeluto behali kanzima Zelimalinda kuluku Nikunzima kenyukela Zelimalinga kuluku Nikunzima kenyukela Zekodwa sohlala sinyova Zelutho behale kanzima Zelima sohlala sinyova Zelutho behale kanzima Zelima lenga kuluku Nikunzima kenyukela.
No, it's fine. You can still project it. I don't have a problem.
Kuliku nikunzima kenyukela Zekodwa sohlala sinyova Zelutho behale kanzima Zelimali uhlala sinyova Zelutho behale kanzima Zelimalinga kuliku Nikunzima kenyukela Zelimalinga kuliku Nikunzima kenyukela Kodwa sohlala sinyova Zelutho behale kanzima Zelimali hlala sinyova
Amandla! Amandla!
Yeah, I think Program Director, let me start by indicating that I am able to shout. I'm not wearing uniform. And let me, in absentia, recognize the presence of the Minister of South African Police Service and the Minister of Correctional Services and the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, the President of POP Crew, Unopala Chigelele, Office Bearers, National Office Bearers, and of course my counterpart, the National Commissioner of SAPS. We also have senior management teams from SAPS and Correctional Services. We have esteemed academics with us in this Indaba. And my first point is going to be that they are a very critical partner in what we do in the criminal justice system. So when some of the professors were talking here yesterday and the doctors, I was listening and I was like, hey, the Indaba will think that we are arch enemies. We are not. Actually, we are in partnership. But what we allow is that criticism that is constructive, that will make us kick into action when we are supposed to. Let me also recognize the presence of the leadership of POP Crew that is in this room from different levels of the organization. Now, I have been part of the Indaba from yesterday. Of course, You know, when I got the invitation, I said to myself, hey, this is a different invitation. We are not invited as a department to go and answer or account because there's a particular security incident or there's a decision we have taken. We are going to participate in a strategic or a strategy and policy discussion. But as the deliberations moved, I was starting to doubt that conclusion in terms of how we assess the criminal justice system, the location of the Department of Correctional Services, its input, and how it's supposed to be structured moving forward. That's the second point. But the third point is that we've had contributors to the Indaba from the department. We had Dr. Musoma, we had the DDG responsible for IT, we had the minister, and then it's myself. And when I checked the inputs, including the minister's address, I realized that they were synchronized in a seamless manner for us to be able to make a meaningful contribution to the Indaba. So the approach that I have taken to the contribution that I'm going to make on behalf of management, we have regional commissioners here and the chief deputy commissioners and other members of management. And I must thank them for staying the course because we tend to want to be very busy as government officials. Busy to an extent where we even fail to just pause and think about the next action. The significance of us being in this Indaba is that in as much as there are those strategic things, we call them strategic and operational, and that we normally would want to, or we would want people to believe we are doing. Now we have put a pause on that. We are wearing our thinking caps and we are able to reflect introspectively on ourselves. How do we do our work and what is supposed to be the policy and strategy outlook? So we are very grateful for the invitation to be part of the discussions in what I'm calling a policy and strategy production sitting. The approach that one is taking is to just zoom into a number of strategic considerations that we have made as the department. And in doing that, I will also talk to existing strategies that we are reviewing and improving. And I will also take the same approach that the minister took of being practical. So, but I thought what is also important is that we need to appreciate the existence of POPCRU from its inception in the late 80s. It remains a progressive institution that has played an important role in bringing about change in the country. Now, this Indaba in its own is a stark testimony of that. And I'm saying that because we are about to move into a policy change environment in the coming months as a country. We all know what is facing us. We are at the end of the 6th term. We are entering into the 2nd term. And in fact, those that are going to contest elections are busy putting their final touches to election manifestos. Now, those election manifestos are going to inform policies and strategies that are going to be implemented when a new government comes into place. But here you find a workers' union like POPCRU spending time, a week, considering policy options, readying itself to make a meaningful contribution to the discourse of these manifestos, to the discourse of guiding South Africans on what choices they should make when they choose what government do they want. But most importantly, what comes out of the Indaba itself will shape the policy discourse beyond the elections. So again, we see POPCRU being a torchbearer with regards to how we should shape the future of this country moving forward. Now, I've already indicated that the outcomes of the Indaba will shape the outlook and content, but specifically in our space then of crime prevention, policing, and the criminal justice system policy. Now, I thought that I will talk to, as I indicated, a number of strategic themes, and one of those is the mandate of the Department of Correctional Services, but from the point of view of the types of skills we require as a department, or the types of skills we're supposed to have as a department. We carry a distinctive mandate that is also elaborative, as it requires a special cadre who must be compassionate, well-skilled in discerning the character of others, but also very firm. And when I'm talking about the character of others, I'm talking about the character of those that are brought into our care by the Constitution, by legislation. We don't have a choice. We have to receive them. So in a sense, working for DCS requires men and women who are willing to combine knowledge and expertise with the highest standards of care for still fellow South Africans, and the most now notable challenge is we also have to deal with an increasing number of foreign nationals in a very challenging environment. And on mapping out the environment, President and the leadership, I don't think I should even go to town on that one, because the contributors before me have mapped out that environment. But under the issue of the mandate, there's one issue that I want to deal with as a precursor, is the issue of instilling a culture of patriotism, work ethic, and a culture of detesting corruption within the value chain of the criminal justice system. In my view, that culture, including corruption, is not costly financially only. It's also costly when it comes to the lives that we lose, where our members get killed because they get sold out by those who are on the side of corruption. For me, that is a very important strategy issue with regards to how we should be planning on winning the war against crime. So, of course, we are located at the tail end of the criminal justice system. Now, what it means basically is that the challenges that are faced by the system, they filter through to correctional services. And they compound whatever challenges we will have in the correctional services setup. And our job is not to frown at those challenges, but our job is to make it a point that when questions are asked, we answer those questions. Because our citizens will always seek for clarity and demand accountability from us. Well, in as much as I've indicated that the challenges that is faced by the system will filter through, the National Commissioner gave an example about the role that is played by those that are in our care in planning crimes. The opposite also obtains. I can give a simple example. This morning, we received information that there was communication within about someone who was planning exactly what the National Commissioner was talking about. And we are putting it in the processes to stop it. So, in as much as we have these challenges, we also should recognize the strengths that we have in that challenging setup to deal and respond and stop the development of crime in that direction. The next theme that I thought I must talk to as a strategic consideration is the parole system. And it was indicated here in the Indaba that the increasing levels of crime in the country are propelled by our parolees. And yesterday, as I observed the discussion, I picked up a consensus that we are saying that in as much as we need to review the performance of the parole system, we should also recognize that there are those that will go through the parole system, but they will never be changed by the rehabilitation and correctional programs that we manage or run in correctional facilities. Those are criminals that have signed their life, blood, and everything to a life of crime. They're just looking for an opportunity to do crime, whether they're inside a correctional facility or they're outside. But that does not necessarily mean, again, we should not identify and build on the strengths we have of dealing with changing the behavior of such offenders. Well, there was even a call on the extreme side of the discussion that maybe we should consider bringing back a death penalty. The only thing that a death penalty does is that it removes permanently the person who commits crime from the society, but it does not necessarily directly lead to the reduction on crime. So there is a review that we are engaged in of the parole system, but we are aware of the intolerance that is out there with regards to the outcomes of the parole system. And the main question is, how do we fight crime and protect our citizens, in as much as we need to also satisfy the objects of our constitution. And that's the route that one does not want to go through, because even as the discussions developed up to this point, there is consensus that we need to look at changing the constitution. We need to look at changing the legislation that we have. But there are these questions that I thought, as strategic considerations, one should pose as part of the process of reviewing the parole system. Should we scrape it entirely? Should we tighten the criteria, including extending the period for eligibility? Should we empower the system with professionals and also improve on rehabilitation and correctional programs? For us, these are actually strategic options that we are looking at as we review the parole system. But there are other variables that contribute to whether a parole system works successfully or not. Availability of funds, availability and deployment of necessary skills and expertise. So the issue of the parole system is one policy consideration that, in my view, the Indaba should address itself to. Well, just oppose that with the fact that we have 152,000 offenders with a bed space of, the average is around 107. And if you scrape the parole system, it means the offenders must serve the full term. It goes back to the problems that were pointed out since the Indaba started. Well, the parole system goes with the perennial challenge of reoffending. And one must indicate that we have noted with concern different figures that are often cited when it comes to reoffending. We made a point through the presentation by Dr. Musoma yesterday that the instruments of measuring this are not empirical. That's why when we engage all these opinion makers and the organizations that pronounce on the statistics on reoffending, we always find that as a moving or shifting target. But what is also worrying is the fact that these figures are thrown at our face when we are also supposed to be showing the progress that we are making out of rehabilitation and correctional programs. And there is progress that we are making out of that. And we measure our progress in terms of the number of offenders that do not reoffend, but also the number of offenders that make it outside the correctional system and also are able to contribute to developing communities and protecting their neighborhoods. Now, I thought I must just present these figures here to indicate that we did a statistical analysis based on the data that we have. We checked in a 3-year period from 2019 to 2022 what is the percentage of reoffending. And we landed at 6.5% based on statistics that we have. Now, on the remission process, actually, through now we did the 4th remission, through the 3 remissions that we did, the reoffending was less than 1%. Now, these statistics, obviously, we are collecting them from what was bemoaned as the manual system, because we are still implementing projects to make it a point that we get onto the highway of technology. These statistics, they come from the sweat of our members who work in correctional facilities. Because you cannot have an offender in a correctional facility without a correctional official next to that offender. What I normally say is that the most important person in the journey of course, a criminal turned offender is a correctional official. Because when they wake up every morning, the first person they interact with is a correctional official. When they sleep at night, the last person they interact with is a correctional official, outside the setup of themselves being offenders. And they do that over the years that they spend in our correctional facilities. Well, I must also indicate that, in our view, more work should be done in communities, in as much as we do rehabilitation, we do correctional programs. And by that we mean victim support and protection, addressing the living conditions of our people, partnerships on social reintegration. And in our view, this is also a strategic consideration that the Indaba should make family. But you implement these interventions not as a once-off action, not as a lip service, but as a sustainable, well-funded, and well-capacitated intervention. So what it means is that we need to stay in those communities. We need to identify strategic centers of influence in those communities and make it a point that we partner with those and we produce sustainable results. Now, the National Commissioner of SAPS was talking about our imbizos, that they are not making the impact that they are supposed to make. It is true. But then what is also important is what is it that we do about that. We did an imbizo like the one that the NETCOM was talking about in Lusikisiki. Yes, the hall was full of women, and they did come out and gave an account of how they continue to suffer and how they have, most of them were actually victims of rape. In that imbizo, we took a decision that the next step is to now call that type of an imbizo that the National Commissioner of SAPS was talking about. We now must call the men. The imbizo was in July. 2 weeks ago, we were in Lusikisiki, in an imbizo, where those men that were supposed to be in the pubs or watching football, wherever, they were in that hall. We actually even broke them into commissions and said, now talk about this problem that you are creating in this community, including your own problems that you are facing, cultural issues that the NETCOM was raising, the issues of unemployment that have been raised here in the past, like from yesterday, the issue of the role of a father in the life of a young man. What is interesting in that imbizo is that we had learners, we had the youth, we had young men, and we had the elderly. We had traditional leaders, we had traditional healers, we had churches, but we had men from all walks of life discussing, and they came up with an action plan on how to deal with the issue of rape in Lusikisiki. Now, that action plan is what is going to keep us in that community for quite some time. And that is a sustainable intervention that we are talking about. And we are not doing it alone. The first imbizo, the National Commissioner deployed the Regional Commissioner of SAPS. We're with the Department of Labor, Department of Home Affairs. So we brought government departments to Lusikisiki and said, what is it that we are not doing correctly as government? But at the same time, what is it that we need to do together with the communities to make sure that we deal with the issue of crime? Now we're going to camp there until we see the statistics going down on crime in Lusikisiki. And for us, that's a strategic consideration that we're presenting to the Indaba, that when we talk about community work, that's exactly what we mean. Now, the next strategic consideration is the issue of the offender profile. With the type of crimes that are committed, the different phenomena, your gangsterism, organized, more violent, and sophisticated crimes, by the way, that are committed or on the side of cyber, that are committed utilizing technology. What is it that we have as correctional services in terms of the offenders that we are taking care of? But also I must indicate that when you look at that profile, you should also align that profile with the number of attacks that our members are experiencing on a daily basis in correctional facilities. If we are talking about more members of gangs getting in correctional facilities, organized crime more violent, we must also be talking about the fact that our members are the ones that are supposed to face these offenders on a daily basis now, for longer periods. It's not about the other legs of the criminal justice system. That we see, yes, we appreciate, but we sit with them. If that offender is sentenced for life, we sit with that offender for life in a correctional facility. And we are also exposed to the attacks and the killings that were part of the environmental scan that we went through since the Indaba started. We are in Ekurhuleni. Last year, 2 of our members were gunned down in Tsakani when they were going to monitor a parolee. In the same manner that the Minister of Police was describing what happened yesterday, what happened recently in Kimberley. So the same exposure, we all experience it in the criminal justice system. Judges are getting threatened. Magistrates are getting threatened. Prosecutors are getting threatened. So that's another consideration that we need to deal with when we look at how we need to protect our members. So we have more lifers in our correctional facilities than those who spend less than 10 years in our facilities. We have a gang combating strategy, but the strategy can only work if we have a critical mass in terms of the numbers and quality to engage with the problem of gangsterism, organized crime, and, as I've indicated, sophisticated crimes. And here I am deliberately referring to security rehabilitation, correctional, and parole supervision strength on the ground. And I'm very grateful and happy that the National Commissioner of SAPS did indicate that we are understaffed. We simply don't have the numbers. 152,000 against 39,000. Out of that 39,000, take out security officials and look at the real ratio. Because we still have those within the 39,000 that are working in offices. Remove me from the 39,000. Think about a correctional official who has to look after 700 offenders at night alone because there's nobody else to deploy. And then there is an escape, and I come as the National Commissioner with the Regional Commissioner, and we say, we must suspend you, we must fire you, you didn't do your job. Well, I actually forgot when we started the song that was saying, I agree with it. No, I'm very serious. I agree with that song, and in the speech here, it is reflected. Now, we are on course implementing what we call vibrant reforms in reshaping the correctional system. But we are saying the problem of overcrowding cannot be left at our door alone, in as much as we are the ones that are housing this or accommodating these offenders. So we actually administer non-custodial sentences to courts, and the response that we get is very low. We still don't understand why a person who's sentenced for 30 days should be spending time in our correctional facility, given the picture that I've already painted. And also, we don't understand why we should be spending 433,000 on average a day on that person. You know? And then when we deal with the problem of overcrowding, we are called a drive-through department. So I did speak to the statistics in terms of the number of beds and the average number of offenders we have in the system. So what we are saying is that this cannot be a problem of the Department of Correctional Services, but we are also saying that we recognize the fact that the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster has actually put together a task team to deal with the problem of overcrowding. So the remission doesn't come from DCS as DCS. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's a program which is part of the strategy on overcrowding. As I indicated when I started my input, that I'm going to talk to strategies that we already have and talk to how we can improve on implementing those strategies. So I am saying that on the overcrowding reduction strategy, what we need to focus on is making the point that the entire value chain of the criminal justice system kicks in terms of making the point that we manage the numbers down. Now, for us, rehabilitation continues to be at the heart of an ideal correctional system. I've spoken about the issue of the profile. I'm not going to repeat it. And we want to continue focusing on rehabilitation. We want to continue focusing on social reintegration. We want to continue focusing on restorative justice. And in our view, the Nelson Mandela rules are still relevant. The challenge with the Nelson Mandela rules is what kind of environment do you implement those rules under? If we can improve the environment on implementing those rules, we will actually be achieving what the President Kebekulu was talking to earlier on. How do we utilize the space and the endowments in correctional services to ensure that we even impact on the community outside? The President referred to farms, and how do we make it a point that those farms contribute to community development, but through the offenders that we rehabilitate. And the Nelson Mandela rules, what they are basically emphasizing is that for you to have an offender that you will be able to rehabilitate, that offender must be healthy physically and mentally, so that you can be able to work on this offender, so that you can be able to even utilize this offender to change conditions of those that are outside when this offender leaves a correctional facility, by contributing to building safer communities. For us, contributing to building safer communities is not about the issue of crime only. It's also about the issue of dealing with social ills. But then there is an issue about us moving away structurally and functionally from the concept or from prisons to correctional facilities. And I thought what I must bring to the fore at the Indaba is actually that has led us to losing. In as much as we pride ourselves as a democracy, that has led us to losing. And these are the issues that I wanted just to indicate to the Indaba. As the department, we lost our security, our space on the security cluster table. We are part of the JCPS, but we are not a security department, and we are supposed to be. With everything that has been described since this Indaba started, we are supposed to be. Now, that's not a legislative decision. It's a policy decision. It's a decision that the the policy makers are supposed to make. If we are saying that correctional facilities contribute to the planning of serious crimes, then correctional services must be in the security cluster so that when you deal with issues of crime intelligence, you don't have to do it by the way when it comes to correctional services. I know it's not an easy issue to raise, but I've raised it, so whatever comes, it's okay. What we also lost is strict discipline in the workforce and also in management. Because the practices in correctional services, because of the fact that we're not a security department, became lax. I can give one simple example. When our members come to work, they used to just walk into the offices, walk into the correctional facility, until a decision was taken to say, no, but you must go back to parade. You must parade. Now, what that led to is proper handover between the shift that is going out and the shift that is coming in. Because the handover was happening between those that are in charge. The members were not checked as to whether they are well, emotionally and otherwise, to continue to do the work. Others come in the time they want to. Even the space to increase bringing contrabands into correctional facilities continue to expand. Now that we have a parade, you see a particular line of discipline at work. So those types of practices, we are bringing them back. We are not bringing them back because we want to make the working environment for our officials bad. We are bringing it back because we want to bring back the control of correctional facilities to correctional officials. That's the reason why we are doing it. We have lost the financial benefits that goes with a prison department. That's the point at which I agree with the song. Because now when you have to look at security considerations in terms of how do you fund and invest in fighting crime, you look at security departments. Okay. I think I can leave the point there. But internally, in the Department of Correctional Services, with everything we have, no matter how small it is, we are bringing back those practices. One of the practices that we lost is simply to recognize the excellence of our correctional officials. A correctional official sees an offender attacking another correctional official, comes to the rescue, nothing, no medal, nothing. No financial reward, nothing. A correctional official sees an offender trying to escape, they get nothing. So far, what they've been getting is the National Commissioner going there to sit down with them and say, thank you very much, you are an example. You look at their uniform, it's clean. Now, how do you encourage your workforce to do the work that they're supposed to do, the work where they put their lives on the line, if you don't have a rewarding system that recognizes them as a critical contributor in their workspace with their expertise? By the way, they went through training. And in any case, one of the things that we're actually reviewing is the training itself. Because when we moved from prisons, even the duration that they spent, our members spent in training was reduced. The type of training was watered down. So those we are fixing. And hopefully they will contribute to us being in a better position to continue to fight crime. But the policy decision that was taken then, I think it's time for us now to review it. It came with the good, as I've indicated, Nelson Mandela rules as being more on the rehabilitation and corrective side, moving away from the punitive side, addressing social ills. But we need to make it a point that we have a system that has the strength and the capability to deal with the type of offender profile that we are managing in the current time. Well, the minister spoke to the issue of the skills revolution. I'm not going to get much into it, except to indicate that in repositioning our rehabilitation programs, we have now decided to focus more on skills development and educational programs. And the sole aim is to make it a point that correctional facilities become the center of production. We have different enterprises. Dr. Msoma talked to them. The minister talked to the self-sufficiency and sustainability program. At the heart of that program is to make it a point that each and every offender picks up a skill. Each and every offender is able to utilize that skill. Number one, when they get out of a correctional facility, but number two, they transfer that skill to the community that they come from. How do we do that? They start doing that when they are still in our correctional facilities. And I've tried to demonstrate in the contribution. So the skills that we are imparting are helping us run what we call a community development program. Obviously, it is linked to the district development model. So we are engaged in food security programs. We provide shelter to those that cannot afford. When the RDP building housing program is taking its own time, we built those houses using the same offenders and parolees who would have gotten the skills from the skills development program. We teach young people on how to use arts and crafts to find their space in the economy. And specifically, we target families of victims of crime and families or those needy members of the community. That becomes our target. We have moved away from, we are not stopping, we are not saying the learners should not be brought to correctional facilities to be scared, to be shown the hohos that are there, to say to them, if you get into a life of crime, you'll be like this hoho. We are not. We are still allowing those that want to bring the learners. But we are going to schools ourselves to work with the learners in schools, imparting those skills as I've indicated. And each and every school that we work with, when we leave, there's a sporting facility. When we leave, there's a food garden or a vegetable garden, which is sustained by our parolees. Now, what it means is that the support that we offer, of course, we also renovate the infrastructure in those schools. So by creating better living and learning conditions in communities, we contribute to reducing the levels of crime. So for us, that's a strategic consideration. And if we do that more, in our view, we see that as a sustainable way of fighting crime. Well, I have indicated when I started my input, President, that we welcome the fact that there's a widespread of contributors to the discourse at this Indaba. And we are looking forward to the papers that are going to come out of the Indaba. The discussions will inform our research agenda as a department, and they will enhance the work that we are doing in policy review and also implementation moving forward. My last point, leadership, is that there are very few organized progressive formations in this country and international. And once again, POPCRU has proven itself to be one of those few who care about the future of this country. Thank you, Program Director. That's where my input will end.
Now we are ready. Thanks very much, NASCOM Tobakale, with their profound input. We are now going to take gender-based violence and femicide in that sequence. Thank you. That's good. That's good. She is a lady. No woman no cry.
you have something?
Yeah. But I think they said it's already here.
And
Hey, why not?
Comrades, I carry you are aware that we are still going to have our commissions. And I like this energy. And we'll appreciate to see this energy even during the commission. Now we are welcoming Dr. Murubula Ngwenya. Over to you. Thank you. Sure.
Zizojigizinto wenukhalelani zizojigizinto wenukhalelani amandla awethu amandla molweni bethinani standing before you is Samukezi Mrubula Ngwenya. I'm greeting everyone present here today. I'm the leadership of the movement, strategic and intentional movement, the president and the leadership. I'm very grateful to have the honor of being invited to be in conversation with trying to find solutions to deal with issues that are facing our country. I'm not going to be long. I'm going to be very short, 2 minutes. So I think where I want to start, I just want to remind us, and I think all of us, we're going to reference Dr. Meiji because he really just awakened the fighting spirit within us. And he reminded us that in everything that we're doing, there's always context and contest, right? So the context that we are existing in, especially in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide, is that the truth is we are living in a highly patriarchal, heteronormative, classist, racist, and sexist society. That is the truth, right? So the reason we are here, or the reasons we always have these kinds of gatherings, is we are trying to find solutions into fighting against the scourge that has overshadowed our country, right? So the problem that we have, or the problem that we're dealing with in trying to fight all these different crimes and incidences that we are seeing, it's deeply rooted in the historical narrative of this country, which was oppressive, right? We're always going to reference the apartheid because we can't talk the present without thinking and looking back at the past. Right, so what is gender-based violence? I think all of us sitting here, we know because it is the biggest elephant in the room, right? Gender-based violence and femicide is a problem, and it has been also cited by our president as the second pandemic that the country is faced with. So now we are told that we are post-COVID, so which made gender-based violence the first pandemic, right? Saying to us that we need to continue to find ways and look for strategies to fight against gender-based violence and femicide. Gender-based violence includes, or it happens, or it appears, and it manifests in different ways and in different places. It doesn't choose if you're rich, you're poor, you're black, you're white, you're heterosexual, you're homosexual. It affects everyone. So I didn't come here to present a paper or the work that I'm working in. I'm 1 foot an activist and 1 foot in academia, but I think my heart lies with finding solutions that will directly have an impact in our communities, right? I always talk to colleagues most times and say, you know, sometimes we write these beautiful papers, we even go to international conference to present our findings, but does our work truly have a direct impact on the communities we're writing about, right? So we sit and we theorize about gender-based violence, but what are we doing? We are academics, we're sitting, we go and interview victims, we go and talk to perpetrators for us to go to conferences, but what is the actual result of the work that we're doing as academics? I'm throwing it to the doctors and the professors in which I came with. Don't kill me, I'm still your friend. We have been made to understand that GBV obviously is a human right violation, right? Because when you do something against a person's consent, you are violating that person's right, right? When you take from a person sexually, right? Because sexual violence is the one that has emerged as being the most prevalent form of gender-based violence. Previous speakers told us about the statistics. They even told us the hot spots in which these violences are taking place. We also have been named the #1 rape capital of the world, right? Because of the forceful taking or the forceful need to have access over another person's body. So that is a human right violation, right? The ministers reminded us and said to us that, well, there are constitutions, there are policies, but who's implementing? Who's supposed to implement? And then they throwed it back to us and say, you must go and implement. But how do you implement? Back again to Dr. Mitch, how do you implement when you have not redressed from the past? Right? So the problem that we are facing with, or that is making it difficult to fight against GBV, is the structural and the socialization, right? How do we dismantle patriarchy when we do not want to admit that we are existing in a deeply patriarchally entrenched society? We don't want to admit, right? We have been socialized into ideas that a man is the head of the house. When that man cannot provide, what happens? They go and steal. We have been socialized that a girl child belongs to the kitchen. A girl child must grow up and be a mother and marry and give sex, right? We have been socialized that when we grow up as a girl child, you must find and marry a man. But what if you grow up and be a girl child that wants to marry a woman? Or what if you grow up and be a boy child that wants to marry a man? Then what happened? How do we deconstruct the socializations in which all of us exist in? How do we deconstruct the patriarchy in which all of us exist in? Right? So that is the problem in which we have. So I just quickly want to give you a roadmap on how our country has promised to deal with gender-based violence. I just want to see quickly by the show of hands, how many of us in the room know of the National Strategic Plan? You see. And the National Strategic Plan is a framework or a document that our government came up with to give us tools to fight against the gender-based violence. I didn't know about the NSP until last year when we had the summit. And this document was rolled out for everyone. This was an attempt of a collaborative initiative where the government, the civil society, the private sector come together in efforts of fighting against the gender-based violence. So just a quick roadmap of what had actually happened. 2018, we know the country was on standby, 1st August, total shutdown, where the 24 demands were delivered into different police stations because of the continuous killing of women, children, and homosexual people, right? So then what led from that total shutdown was we had the first summit, GBVF summit, right? Wherein the president made beautiful promises, promise of change in policies, change in policing, change in implementations, right? But after the civil society recognized that the promises of the government were not coming into fruition, the president called for the second summit, which happened last year, right? What was found in that summit, which became very disturbing, is that a lot of people in the country do not know of the existence of the NSP, right? So how can we sit, or even you guys in your workplace, how can you continuously or properly implement or fight against GBV if you do not know the strategy that was given to you to fight GBV? So one of the resolutions from the NSP was that the NSP needs to be familiarized, right? They even did like a simplified version of the NSP to say this document needs to go out to people. Everyone needs to know about the NSP because we really need to find a solution of fighting against the gender-based violence. When you leave here today, please just Google the NSP. It's there. You'll get it, and then you read everything or the framework that has been placed for us to fight against gender-based violence. Right, so the total shutdown, the 24 demands, it led to the first summit, which happened in 2018, 1st, 2nd November. The second summit happened between the 1st and 2nd November last year, right? And as usual, the president was there, and he made promises, and he talked about policies and that were going to be reviewed, and the introduction of new policies. I don't know if some of you saw me when the minister was speaking, the Minister of Justice. I pulled up this placard because in that summit, the minister promised that the sex work bill was going to be tabled and agreed on in Parliament. So we hear now that the sex work bill has been removed, or it's not been entertained anymore. Sex workers are workers who contribute into the economy of this country, and they are also just as women and children and the homosexual people victims of gender-based violence. So if we don't decriminalize sex work as work, who must protect sex workers? Who must protect sex workers? So I pulled this up. I was sitting there. I don't know if you saw it. I was asking him, what about the sex work bill, Mr. Minister? Because we need answers. We don't need promises anymore. We need answers. Right, so the lessons, obviously, that came up from the second summit is that promises were not fulfilled, right? Nothing or less of the things that were promised from the first summit were not fulfilled. That's why there was a second summit, right? We have policies and laws that were announced by the president, which obviously after the summit, we still saw the continuous rise of killing of women and children and gender non-conforming people. The NSP, everyone, colleagues, it's a very important document. I really would love everyone to have the NSP because you will see the starting point of how we can really deal and practically try to find solutions against gender-based violence. So there were a lot of other policies that were amended, like the 1998 Domestic Violence Act, the Criminal Law, Sexual Offense and Related Matter Act, the Criminal and Related Matters, and the Criminal Law Forensic Procedures and Amendment Act. These were all amended in pursuit of trying to fight
General
violence. Right, but what is the point of amending the laws
from criminals to move?
Happening?
That's the first thing
right. And because also stats continue to show us that we are dealing with a problem, a deeply rooted structural problem that interconnects with race, gender, class, and sexuality. Right.
Currently piloting a project
to deal and properly find solutions against GBVF, we need to uproot this historical problem or this deeply rooted, interconnected problem that we are faced with. Right. So obviously, one of the tools, like I mentioned, I think I spoke about this, One of the tools that we are given to fight against GBVF is a multisectoral approach, which gave birth to the NSP, right? And the NSP having 6 pillars, right? All of these pillars are strategic pillars, and they are focusing on certain areas into amplifying and to
the minute General Mawela leaves, you live with that agenda.
So one of the pillars that I just want to talk about is pillar 6, which is research and information
with racial inequality.
So universities have
and this
been
work is
roped in
about the
to also contribute into finding solutions against gender-based violence and femicide. I know the Department of Higher Education has made out a call to institutions to have either a gender desk or a gender unit. Right? So most institutions have responded to this call. The University of Limpopo has what we know as a gender desk. Right? It's open for both staff and students. If you are a victim, or have you been assaulted, or you suspect someone else being a victim, you can go to this gender desk, because also statistics have shown to us that students at universities are also numbers, right? Students at universities are also numbers and are deeply affected by gender-based violence, whether they are attacking each other or it's attack from outside. Right? So universities now have been called to have this gender desk and to also try to contribute into the NSP, into Pillar 6, into trying to find solutions against gender-based violence. So the identified gaps, I just listed 4 identified gaps, but I think there's more, right? There is one which is really, I think most of us, we get uncomfortable when we talk about it, societal gap, which really needs us to unpack the culture and religion as contributors to gender-based violence. The former speaker spoke about how culture cannot be the same. Culture evolves. Culture is not static. And we need to understand and agree that what was happening back then cannot be what is happening right now. Right? So if we can try to reassess and deconstruct our deeply patriarchal cultural and religious beliefs that are contributors to gender-based violence and femicide, that is one step of us fighting. Right? Patriarchy, right? It's a problem, guys. It's a problem in heterosexual relationships. It's a problem in homosexual relationships. Right? Patriarchy is deeply rooted and somehow really now has become normalized. It's okay for a man to say, no, you can't do this, I'm the man of the house. And then just oblige as a woman.
Maybe that's why I don't
right? And we know that a lot of times a Bible has been used to say, no, you must be submissive to me because Acts chapter 3 verse 14, and we know this is not the time. This is the time when now we need to claim our agency as women. We need to claim our agency as gender non-conforming people and continue to say, Zizo Jigizindo.
I have my reasons.
Right, and then the question that I also wanted us to look into, because also you find that this first gap of society, a lot of these things are happening in rural areas, right? Which tells us that rural areas have become a forgotten site, right? We need in our fight not only have these talks here.
I think that white man was a genuine friend of my father.
We need to go to the rural parts of the country and speak to traditional leaders and speak to chiefs and say, guys, let's have conversation about this big problem that is currently facing our country, because we can't deny it, colleagues. Culture and religion, they are contributors to gender-based violence and femicide. And another gap, which I think all of us and the previous speaker yesterday and today we talked about, is policy, right? We have these beautiful policies. We have a beautiful constitution that tells us that someone cannot do something to you against your will. But things are happening. Black lesbians are being raped day and night because of their sexuality, but the Constitution has promised them rights.
We have arrested 2
So
engineers.
how do we then deal with policies that are not implementable? Why is the government selling us false hopes? Why are they putting these beautiful policies written there, but they are hard to implement on the ground? Who must implement on the ground, and how do we implement? Right? So I liked that all of us, we raised a concern around policies that are not easily implementable. And obviously then the justice system, right? We know that a lot of complaints or comments around gender-based violence is that police officials, they usually secondary victimize, right? Secondary victimization is when you go to report a case and then you are asked questions that are further victimizing you. Right? We had cases in Limpopo of where a gay man went to go and report a case, and then a police official asked him, "You are a man, how can you be raped?" That is secondary victimization, right? So there is a need to have continuous sensitization trainings and workshops of talking around issues of violence and sexuality across all spectrums, right? We need to come to an understanding that the world is no longer in binary now. We don't only have a man and a woman. We have other binaries and genders that are existing, right? So if you are, as a person or as a public official, don't understand that there is a man who loves another man, you do not have to bring that into your workspace, because you are at your workspace to serve. You made an oath to serve and protect. Right? So one of the issue that was raised against the justice system is that secondary victimization, poor service delivery, inadequate monitoring of cases. But we heard yesterday and today that there is not enough manpower, or sometimes, you'd find that systems are not functioning properly. But we are still calling and saying that you need to put your house in order. Right? We can't have victims going and getting re-victimized again. And then, way forward, this is not prescriptive. This is just to continue the conversation. I think all of us spoke about this, that in the fight against gender-based violence, we truly need to adopt a collaborative, visionary, and transformation leadership. We can't do it alone. The police can't do it alone. The government and the presidency can't do it alone. The civil society can't do it alone. It needs to be a collaborative effort where everyone, all of us, including our communities, we work together to really just try and find a way of fighting against this scourge. Right? And we need to strengthen people's agency. When people come and present their cases or have complaints about certain things, they need to be listened to, right? Because when a person goes to report a criminal offense, the first point is the police station. So their agency and their protection, they needs to be taken into account, right? And this one I love so much, because there's a saying from the minority group that always says, "There's nothing for us without us." Right? So you can't advocate for marginalized or oppressed people without them. You can't write a policy for homosexual people without them. You need to include them, because it's them who knows the struggle. It's their day-to-day experience. So if we are saying we are sitting here today, we want to serve our communities, community members need to be here. Right? If we're saying we want to go and sensitize traditional leaders, they need to be part of the conversation, because it's more or less like we're speaking amongst ourselves. Right? So we need to put communities at the center of our intervention methods. Right? We need to transform our cultural norms that perpetuate violence. We can't run away from this. We really need to transform the way in which we have been socialized culturally and religiously, right? And we need to go into social institutions, our families, our schools, the religion, the media, we need to get them on board, because all of these social institutions, they play a critical role in socialization. We learn things from the TV easily. We learn things from where we come from. All of us are coming from different backgrounds, but we need to get all of us and all of the social institutions on board, right? Another thing or theme that came out from the second presidential GBV summit was that there's a need to fund the fight. Civil society organizations, most of the time, they do the work without any form of funding, right? They work with victims without any form of funding. Right, so there was a call from civil society to the president to say, for us as civil society to work effectively, you need to fund the fight being the GBVF, right? And then obviously we need to keep the state accountable. We need to keep you guys accountable. We need to always look for answers and say what had happened since the last presidential summit. Right, so I just want to also share a short story before I can hand over to the next speaker. Right, in our fight, I've seen this happening everywhere. I see it in civil movement spaces. I see it in academia. In our fight against GBVF, we always prioritize protecting women. We always prioritize protecting children. We always prioritize protecting gender non-conforming people. Right? But we don't often talk about men being victims of gender-based violence. We talk about taking the girl child to work, but we leave the boy child behind. We talk about teaching a girl child that don't sit like this, don't talk like this, but we forget about the boy child. What then happens to the boy child that we're leaving behind? So, the next speaker is just going to take us through understanding gender-based violence is also affecting men. Society has told men to be quiet. Society has told us that men don't cry. Hey, why are you crying? You're a man. Society has told us that men shouldn't voice their feelings or their hurts, and we have normalized it. That's why, if you look at statistics, people who commit suicide, men are leading in those statistics. Because we have silenced men. Let me not take the next speaker's presentation. Thanks, colleagues.
Amandla. Now we are welcoming Dr. Where are you going, Doctor? Dr. Natasha Tshwane. Thank you. Don't forget to fight the rights for men also. Tint to mama.
What tin to mama, tin to mama. What tin bogot, what tin bogot, what tin bogot, what tin bogot. Tintama, tintu mama, tintu mama, tintu mama, tintu mama. What tintimbogo, what tintimbogo, what tintimbogo. What in Timbogo? Tintu mama, tintu mama, tintu mama, what tintu mama, what in Timbogo? What in Timbogo? How much did I get? Imbogo. Watintimbogo. Titama. Tintu mama. Tintu mama.
Amanda.
Wait.
Kibashumi Kirina. Am I doing it correctly? Bashumi.
Kibona.
Watinti mbogoto. Watinta abafazi.
Watinti mbogoto.
Watinti ndoda.
Watinti silwane.
Okay. Okay, which?
Right here.
That's what I'm trying to.
Yes, Raja.
Can you double check them? I think they should be there. Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before any further more of wasting of time, as I believe we've already wasted time with this transitioning of one document to another. As already introduced, my name is Sabelina Tshwane. I'm from the Tshwane University of Technology, the Polokwane campus to be precise. Bareshuba Limpopo, I'm here. I hope you'll be as excited when I'm done with my presentation. Yes, definitely. Just to give you a quick background of where I come from, so that you get a clear understanding of why the interest in what I will be speaking about. My area of specialization around gender equality and sustainability, as well as gender relations, as a catalyst of gender reforms towards strengthening the affirmation back and analyze as I'll be busy presenting. While I'll be presenting, keep the picture that you're going to be seeing in mind. What has been said on the video, I don't think you'll be able to hear, but pay attention to what we see on the video.
Those guys, the camera guys, they say they can't see you. Can you drop this?
Okay, it's okay.
They say they can't see you.
It's okay. I think that is enough background of what I'll be tapping into. The academic rigor, it's a space that allows one to embark on a research or find empirical findings that at times society is not ready to tap into such spaces. But with empirical findings or evidence, you are able to say, with this proof, I can now come to you and say, this is happening, and there's a proof that this is happening. I will be talking about gender-based violence perpetuated against men, the forgotten gender. I'm not so sure after the video.
Hussein.